AITA for kicking out my stepmom and changing locks after she called me a freeloader? My name is Emma. At 22, I am a recent college graduate, and I need to tell you about my house. To be precise, it belonged to my mother. It became my inheritance 4 years ago, when she lost her determined battle against colon cancer. My mother was always a meticulous planner. Long before her diagnosis, she had all her affairs in perfect order. Chief among them was the house, paid off in full and completely in her name. She had bought it years before my father even entered the picture. With a foresight for which I am eternally grateful, she made sure to talk to me about her will. I can still hear her voice, unwavering through all the pain and uncertainty, making a promise. This way, she said, you will always have a home. Life wasn't always this complicated. My parents were married for 10 years until my father chose another woman over us. I was 9 years old the day he packed his bags. There was no dramatic fight, no arguments over custody or assets. He simply left. The only thing he agreed to was paying for my college education. He opened a special account and immediately transferred the total sum for my future studies. I guess that was his version of child support. Dad started a new family rather quickly. His wife, Vanessa, had their daughter shortly after. She is 10 years younger than me. I visited them often, sometimes staying at their rented house, but it never felt right. Vanessa was usually busy with my half-sister, celebrating her latest achievement or doing her hair. Dad was always working, claiming he needed to provide for his new family. It's funny how I was no longer really included in that category. Vanessa would ask, but her tone always suggested she expected me to decline. Emma, would you like to have dinner with us? We kept things cordial, however, exchanging birthday cards, holiday greetings, and the occasional forced family dinner. Everything was very proper and polite, in that awkward way that gives you goosebumps. Mom made good money as a senior accountant, so when the cancer struck, she was able to focus entirely on her treatment. I was 14 when we received the diagnosis. She quit her job immediately to concentrate on fighting the disease. For 4 years, we lived between hospital visits and treatment sessions. Mom never complained once. She simply kept fighting. She kept planning. She kept making sure that I would be okay. But cancer doesn't care about plans. I was 18 when she died, just a few weeks before I was supposed to leave for college in another state. Grief hit me hard, I could barely function. That was when Dad surprised me by stepping up. He, Vanessa, and my half-sister moved in temporarily to help me cope with the loss. I was too paralyzed to question it at the time, too grateful for any support I could receive. Putting his arm around my shoulders, Dad said, "We'll help you get through this." Vanessa nodded, trying to look sympathetic, while my half-sister explored what was now my house. At the end of the summer, I faced a dilemma. College was starting in a few weeks, and I had no idea what to do with Mom's house. My house now. I couldn't bear the thought of selling it, but leaving it empty for 4 years didn't seem smart either. That was when Dad proposed his idea during breakfast one morning, pushing his coffee mug aside. "Emma, I've been thinking. How about we stay here? We pay all the bills, maintain the place. You wouldn't have to worry about anything while you're at school." I looked at Vanessa. She was making pancakes at the stove. She turned around and smiled. "It would be good for all of us," she added. "Lily is already enrolled in the local school, and the house would be well taken care of." It made sense. During the 2 months they had been living with me, things had been surprisingly fine. Vanessa had stopped being so distant, and Lily, my half-sister, had actually started treating me like a real sister instead of a stranger who showed up occasionally. So I agreed. Looking back, it seemed like the perfect solution. I packed up Mom's personal things, keeping what I wanted and storing the rest in the attic. I went off to college feeling confident in my decision. Over the next 4 years, I came home during the holidays and summer breaks. Those visits were pleasant. In fact, Vanessa cooked these big welcome home dinners. As if she had always known my favorites, she would say, "I made your favorite lasagna." Lily would drag me to her room to show me her latest artwork or tell me about school drama. During Christmas break, we would all decorate the tree together. Dad would lift Lily up to put the star on top while Vanessa and I amicably debated whether tinsel was tacky or classic. We would sit down to drink hot chocolate, and sometimes I could almost forget that this wasn't the family I started with. Summer visits were different. Longer, more relaxed. Lily and I spent afternoons at the community pool, and I helped her with her summer reading. Vanessa invited me to her book club meetings, and we actually had fun analyzing whatever romance novel they had picked that month. One night I overheard Vanessa say to Dad, "Your daughter is so good with Lily. It's nice to have her home." That made me feel warm inside, as if maybe we had truly become a proper family. I called regularly during the semesters, having weekly chats with Dad about my classes. I caught up with Vanessa about house maintenance, and she would say things like, "The rose bushes you planted are blooming beautifully, Emma." I also had FaceTime sessions with Lily, who kept me updated on her middle school adventures. Everything seemed perfect. We had created this strange but functional family dynamic, built on the foundation of my mother's house. I never imagined it could all fall apart so quickly, but I guess that is what happens with houses. No matter how solid the foundation is, you never know what is going on behind the walls. Finally, at 22, with my degree in hand and a job waiting for me back home, I was ready to start the next chapter of my life. I had already accepted a position at Sterling and Vance Financial Advisors in my hometown. They had interviewed me over Zoom and offered me the job right away. Everything was falling perfectly into place, or so I thought. The taxi dropped me off in front of my house on a sunny June afternoon. I stood there for a moment, taking in the familiar sight. Mom's rose bushes were in full bloom, although they looked different from how she used to keep them. The lawn was neatly mowed, and new curtains hung in the windows. Small changes had occurred while I was away at college. Dragging my suitcases up the driveway, I fished for my keys with a smile, already imagining sleeping in my old bedroom that night. But when I tried to open the door, something was wrong. The key wouldn't turn. I tried again, thinking maybe I was just tired from the trip, but no. The key definitely didn't fit. I muttered to myself, "What the hell?" I tried the key again before giving up and knocking hard on the door, since it was broad daylight and they might be watching television. Vanessa opened the door. Her eyes widened in surprise. She was wearing an apron and had flour on her hands as if she had been baking. "Emma, what are you doing here?" I brought my suitcase inside, noticing Dad and Lily in the living room, both looking equally shocked by my appearance. Lily was lounging on the couch with her phone, while Dad was sitting in his favorite armchair, Mom's old armchair, actually reading something on his tablet. "What do you mean?" "I live here," I said, looking around at what seemed to be subtle changes in the living room decor. "Why were the locks changed?" Dad scratched his neck, a nervous habit he had always had. "Oh right. I changed them last month for security, you know. There were some break-ins in the neighborhood." Trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice, I said, "Couldn't you have told me or sent me a new key?" "I mean, this is my house," Vanessa said carefully, crossing her arms over her chest. She had wiped the flour off her hands and looked increasingly uncomfortable. "We weren't expecting you." "Why not? I graduated last week. I told you I was coming home to start my new job." I looked between them, feeling more and more uneasy. Something was wrong with their reactions. Lily had even put down her phone and was watching the scene with a strange expression. Dad intervened, standing up suddenly. "Emma, can we talk in the office for a minute?" I followed him to Mom's old office. My office now, technically. The room still had Mom's degrees on the wall, and her collection of financial reference books on the shelves. He closed the door behind us, and I noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he turned to face me. He began, his voice low. "Listen, honey, there's something you need to know. Vanessa. Well, she thinks this house belongs to me." I stared at him blankly. Without meeting my eyes, he continued. "I told her it was my house, that I let your mother and you have it out of kindness after the divorce, and that after your mother passed away, it came back to me. She thinks you have only been living here because I allowed it." I must have stood there with my mouth open, staring at Dad for a full minute before finding my voice again. My first instinct was to storm out of the office and tell Vanessa everything. Now I understood her surprised look when I showed up. In her mind, I was just a freeloader trying to sneak into her house. I moved toward the door, saying, "I have to tell her the truth." Dad grabbed my arm, begging, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, Emma, just give me a little time. I'll find a new place to live, I promise. I just need to figure out how to tell her without destroying our marriage." Destroy your marriage? What about what you're doing to me? He pulled a set of keys out of his pocket, offering them to me like an olive branch. These are for the new locks. Please, sweetheart, just a few weeks. That's all I ask. Let me handle this my way. I took the keys, feeling sick to my stomach. Finally, I said, okay, but this is crazy, Dad. You know that, right? Relief flooded his face as he nodded. Thank you, honey. I'll fix this, I promise. But things started to go downhill immediately. That night at dinner, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Vanessa kept shooting me looks across the table, all her previous warmth gone. The woman who used to bake my favorite cookies and invite me to her book club was now acting like I was a stranger who had wandered in off the street. Lily, completely oblivious to the tension, asked for more potatoes. Dad, Vanessa asked suddenly without looking at me, would anyone mind if I redecorated the living room? The current setup is a bit outdated. I gripped my fork tighter, knowing she was talking about Mom's furniture arrangement. Dad coughed uncomfortably and changed the subject. The next morning, I was making coffee when Vanessa cornered me in the kitchen. She was still in her robe, her hair messy, but her eyes were sharp and focused. Leaning against the counter, she said, Emma, I think we need to talk about your plans. My plans? I asked casually, as if asking about the weather. Yes. When do you plan on looking for your own place? Now that you have a job lined up, you should start thinking about moving out. You are a grown woman after all. I took a sip of coffee, counting to 10 in my head. Actually, I've talked to Dad about staying here for now. He's fine with it. Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment I thought she might argue. Instead, she simply turned around and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with my cooling coffee and a growing sense of dread about how this would all play out. The next 2 weeks were like living in a hostile environment. Vanessa's attitude went from cold to downright passive-aggressive. She accidentally washed my clothes with colors that bled, claiming she forgot which one was my laundry basket. She cooked family dinners but conveniently made just enough for 3 people, acting surprised when I came to the table. If I tried to watch television in the living room, she suddenly needed to vacuum right there. If I was using the kitchen to make breakfast, she would barge in and start reorganizing the cabinets, muttering about how some people never learn to keep things tidy. She even moved my mother's favorite vase from its spot on the mantelpiece to some corner shelf, claiming it didn't match her new decorative vision. The worst part was watching Lily follow her mother's lead. My half-sister, who just a few weeks earlier was sending me memes and calling me for advice about boys, now rolled her eyes every time I walked into a room. She started calling me that girl when she talked about me with her friends on the phone, loudly enough for me to hear. Despite the tension at home, my professional life was taking off. I visited Sterling and Vance Financial Advisors, where they showed me my future workspace, a nice corner desk with views of downtown. My future colleagues seemed friendly and welcoming, especially Hannah from the risk assessment team, who offered to take me to lunch. While we ate sandwiches, she asked, "When do you start?" "In 2 weeks," I replied. "Just enough time to get settled in at home." That evening at dinner, I shared my start date with the family, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. They showed me my office today. "I start in 2 weeks. Vanessa's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down with exaggerated care. "Well, isn't that wonderful? Once you receive your first paycheck, you can start looking for your own apartment. I know some nice complexes across town, very affordable for young professionals." I caught Dad's pleading look across the table. His eyes seemed to beg me to stay quiet, to keep his lie going just a little longer. I stabbed my peas and said nothing. To avoid the tension at home, I started reconnecting with old high school friends. Olivia and Madison were still in town, and we would meet up for coffee or shopping, falling back into our old rhythms as if no time had passed. But coming home was always awkward. I would walk in and hear hushed conversations from the kitchen or the living room that stopped abruptly when I appeared. Dad and Vanessa would jump apart like guilty teenagers. Papers were hastily shoved into drawers, and fake smiles were plastered on their faces. On Saturday morning, I woke up to an unusually quiet house. There was no sound of Vanessa preparing weekend meals in the kitchen, no loud music from Lily's room, and no Dad watching sports on television. The silence felt wrong somehow, like the calm before the storm. I went downstairs in my pajamas, checking every room as I went. The kitchen was spotless, not just clean but unused since the night before. The living room was empty, the cushions perfectly arranged on the couch. Lily's boots, which usually cluttered the entryway, were gone. Even Dad's car was missing from the driveway. I checked my phone. No messages or notes about where everyone had gone. My first thought was that maybe they had gone out for breakfast, but something felt off. They never went out for breakfast without at least leaving a note. Even during these tense weeks, they had maintained that basic courtesy. I tried calling Dad first, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Strange. I tried several more times with the same result. That automated voice telling me the person I was trying to reach was unavailable. A knot started to form in my stomach. Finally, I called Vanessa. She answered on the fourth ring, just as I was about to hang up. Her voice was sharp, hostile, in a way I had never heard before. "What do you want?" In the background, I could hear waves and what sounded like tropical music. "I just wanted to know where everyone is," I said, taken aback by her tone. "I woke up and the house was empty." She laughed, an ugly, malicious sound that made my stomach churn. "Oh, we didn't tell you. We're in the Maldives. First-class flights, luxury resort, all-inclusive. We didn't mention it because, frankly, we didn't want you tagging along and expecting us to pay for you too. Not that you know anything about paying for your own things." "What?" She cut me off. "Save it. I'm sick of this whole situation. You're nothing but a lazy freeloader living in our house as if you own it. Your father might put up with it, but I am done. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have a grown woman living in our house, eating our food, using our utilities?" My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the phone. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, my mother's chairs, actually my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. "Vanessa, She growled. "No, you listen to me. Your father never wanted you. You were just an obligation. He already wasted enough money on your college education. And now you are illegally squatting in our house like an entitled princess. Well, I've had enough. You thought you could live here forever, mooching off us while we work hard to maintain this home." I could hear Lily laughing in the background and Dad's muffled voice saying something I couldn't understand. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. With her voice dripping with venom, she continued, "When we return, I want you gone, do you understand me? Pack your things and get out of our house. If you are still there when we get back, I will throw you out myself. And believe me, I won't be gentle about it. I don't care where you go. Live on the street if you want, you are no longer our problem. And don't bother calling your father. He agrees with me. He is just too weak to tell you himself. We have already blocked your number. Have a good life. Emma. Or don't. I really couldn't care less." The line went dead. I sat in that kitchen for what felt like hours, the fury slowly replacing the shock. They were living in my house, the house my mother had worked for, that she had left to me, and they had the nerve to call me a freeloader to try to kick me out. Well, I had had enough of playing along with Dad's lies. My hands were still shaking, but now with anger instead of pain. I blocked their numbers on my phone. Then I started methodically going through the house, gathering their belongings. Vanessa's expensive clothes, Lily's school things, and Dad's golf clubs all went into boxes and suitcases. I worked all through Saturday, fueled by rage and bitter disappointment. By Sunday morning, I had their lives packed up and stacked in the garage. I found a 24-hour locksmith who could come right away. He worked fast, replacing the locks on all the doors. It cost a small fortune, but it was worth every penny. When he finished, I handed him my credit card, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction as I clutched the new keys. On Monday morning, I started my new job at Sterling & Vance. For 2 weeks, I threw myself into work, learning the ropes, making new friends, trying not to think about the confrontation I knew was coming. I kept their things in the garage, but I rearranged the house to restore it to the way Mom had it, removing all traces of Vanessa's decorative vision. Then that Friday arrived. I pulled into the driveway after work and found them standing there. Dad looking nervous, Vanessa red in the face with fury, and Lily hanging back with a scowl. They must have just returned from their vacation. Their suitcases were still in their rental car. Vanessa started yelling before I even got out of my car. "How dare you change our locks? How dare you lock us out of our own house? I calmly walked past them to unlock the door. Vanessa followed me, still screaming. We are going to call the police. This is trespassing. This is our house. I turned to face them. Something inside me finally snapped. No, Vanessa, it's not your house. It never was. This house belongs to me. My mother bought it before she even met Dad. She left it to me in her will. The only reason you have been living here is because I allowed it temporarily. Vanessa laughed, but it was an insecure sound. She looked at Dad. Tell her she's lying. Tell her this is our house. Dad wouldn't look anyone in the eye. He just slumped his shoulders. She's telling the truth. The house was always hers. I watched as the truth set in, as Vanessa's face morphed from anger to calculation in a matter of seconds. Her entire demeanor changed as if a switch had been flipped. She forced a laugh. Oh, Emma, honey, you didn't think I was serious on the phone, did you? I was just joking. You know how I get sometimes. All that sun and those tropical cocktails went to my head. Stop, I said quietly, but she kept going, taking a step toward me with her arms outstretched as if to hug me. We are family, remember? All those good times we had, the book club meetings, the holiday dinners. We can have that again. Dad stepped in then, his voice heavy with emotion. Princess, I'm so sorry. I know I handled all this poorly, but I love you. You are my daughter. Please, can't we fix this? I looked at him, really looked at him. The father who left when I was 9 years old, who paid for my education but missed out on my life, who lied about my house, my inheritance, my mother's legacy. Fix what, Dad? The fact that you lied to your wife about owning my house, or the fact that you stood by and watched as she planned to kick me out of it? Vanessa turned to me with that smile. Emma, let's be reasonable. We can all live here together. We'll pay rent. No, I said firmly, we can't. Your things are in the garage. Take them and leave. That was when Vanessa's mask cracked again. You ungrateful little brat. After everything we've done for you, you would throw your own family out on the street. I felt strangely calm as I replied. You just spent, what, $10,000 on a luxury vacation that you deliberately hid from me? I am pretty sure you can afford an apartment. Dad tried again, reaching for my arm. Emma, please, I know I made a mistake, but... I cut him off. You didn't make a mistake. You lied. For 4 years, you let your wife believe she owned my mother's house. You watched as she tried to redecorate it, reorganize it, erase every trace of Mom. And when she planned to throw me out, you said nothing. I was going to tell her the truth, he protested. When? After I was gone? After she had finished making my house her home? I shook my head. It's over. Take your things and leave. I went inside and closed the door, ignoring Vanessa's screams about ingratitude and cruelty. Through the window, I watched them load boxes from the garage into their rental car. Vanessa was still screaming, her face red with fury. Lily was crying. Dad just looked defeated. It took them 3 trips to take everything. As they were loading the last box, Dad tried one more time, knocking on the door. I didn't open it. Finally, they left as the sun was setting. The next day, Dad tried to call from a new number. He begged. Emma, please, can't we fix this? No, Dad, we can't, I said. Vanessa made it very clear how you all really feel about me. A freeloader, an obligation, someone you never wanted. Maybe those were her words, but your silence said enough. That was 2 months ago. I still live in Mom's house, my house. I have repainted the walls, planted new rose bushes in the garden, and made it mine again. Sometimes I think about them, wondering where they ended up, but mostly I think about Mom and how she made sure I would always have a home, no matter what happened. Dad still tries to call sometimes from different numbers. I don't answer anymore. Some bridges once burned must remain in ashes. The funny thing is, I am happier now. My job is going well. I have made new friends at work, and for the first time since Mom died, I feel at peace in this house. Sometimes healing means letting go of people, of lies, of the fairy tale family you wanted to believe in. Comment. I want to take a moment to talk about the profound courage it takes to protect your own peace. Setting boundaries is rarely comfortable, but it is an essential act of self-respect. Sometimes the people we desperately want to call family are the ones we need to distance ourselves from to truly heal. Healing does not mean forcing a connection that breaks your heart. Rather, it means learning to let go of the illusions we build around others. You deserve to be surrounded by honesty and genuine care, not conditions or hidden agendas. Walking away from a toxic environment is not an act of cruelty, but a necessary step toward reclaiming your life. True kindness includes being kind to yourself first, which means refusing to carry the weight of other people's lies. Your home and your heart should always be safe spaces built on a foundation of trust. I hope this reminds you to honor your own worth and to never settle for less than the respect you deserve. Please share your thoughts below, and remember to always choose the path that brings you true inner peace. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.